Hey guys, PIEGUYRULZ here, and welcome back to Square Theory. So, why does everybody love Band Geeks, and why does the internet pretty much treat it as if it is the best episode of SpongeBob? Now, I've certainly seen people disagree with this and state their favorite episode isn't Band Geeks, but it definitely seems like the general consensus of the internet kind of comes forth and is saying that Band Geeks is the best episode, or at least Band Geeks is the episode that most people list as their favorite. More people Band Geeks than anything else. And you're totally free to agree with that, or disagree with that. In fact, I personally disagree with that. Band Geeks is not my favorite episode. In fact, I don't even really think it would be like in my top 10 maybe. I don't know. I go back and forth on what exactly my favorite episode is, and maybe someday I'll answer that question. Now, even though it's not my favorite or close to my favorite episode, I still consider it a great episode, and I kind of wanted to get down to the nitty-gritty of why I think people may treat this as their favorite episode. And first off, I'm going to tell you, I don't think it has anything to do with the comedy. Not because the episode isn't funny, I think the episode is actually really funny, but I think there are a lot of really funny SpongeBob episodes, and in my opinion, there's a lot of episodes that are just as funny, or perhaps even more funny, than Band Geeks. So tossing that aside, what other possible reasons could it be that people really like, or at the very least, really remember this episode when asked what their favorite SpongeBob episode is? So let's start off with the fact that Squidward is the protagonist in this episode. And while there are certainly other episodes where he's the protagonist, it doesn't happen that often, and a lot of people really like Squidward. In fact, I'm sure some people like him a lot more than SpongeBob, or at the very least think he's more of a dynamic, interesting, and comedic character than SpongeBob. He is certainly pretty dang funny. To add on to that, Squidward doesn't get harmed in this episode. Sure, his ego gets bruised, and he gets tossed up on the wall with a bunch of drumsticks, but other than that, he really isn't harmed, like, definitely not physically, and that's pretty unusual for any episode, and very unusual for an episode that Squidward stars in. And Squidward is victorious in the end. He ends the episode getting to be happy, which doesn't happen very often. And this episode introduces Squilliam, who is a great foil for Squidward and makes a great antagonist in the episode. He really doesn't appear that often, but from what we see, he is the perfect rival for Squidward, because he is just as snobby and snooty, except Squilliam gets his way. Squilliam is everything Squidward is, but also a spoiled brat because he has the success to back it up. So you really want to root for Squidward because he's the underdog and kind of a loser in his position compared to Squilliam, who acts like a snob and still gets away with it. Another thing that's unusual about this episode is that there are a lot of main characters in it. Not everyone. Gary isn't there, Karen isn't there, Mermaid and Barnacle Boy, and the Flying Dutchman and SpongeBob's parents don't appear. But in terms of like the core cast, most characters make an appearance. You get Mrs. Puff, you get Sandy, you get Plankton, you've got Larry the Lobster, as well as SpongeBob, Mr. Krabs, Squidward, obviously. It's really nice to see a lot of these characters play off of each other, which, like, weirdly enough, doesn't happen that often. I mean, we get it in Culture Shock, and we get it in SpongeBob's House Party, but it doesn't happen frequently enough, and it's cool to see. It's cool to just see them all there, even if not all of them get to do something very important, like Pearl doesn't really get to do much, and Mrs. Puff really only has, like, one thing that she does in banging the cymbals. It's just cool to see them there. It's cool to see them incorporated. And most of the characters do have an interesting bit or just like something that goes along with them. In terms of the story, it's an underdog tale. A, well, pretty 80s underdog tale at that. It's the story of a bunch of unlikely losers who have a challenge in front of them and a snobby rival team, although we don't actually get to see the team, we just see Squilliam. And these plucky underdogs have to, despite all the odds, rise up to the challenge and show the snobby guy that he was wrong about them. And of course, the funny part is that instead of it being about a sports team, it's about the band. That's kind of how they take that and turn it on its head. So not only do you have a very traditionally loved story, you have the SpongeBob flipping it on its ear type of thing that the show likes to do frequently. And speaking of sports teams, one of the things about this episode is the effect of all of the people in the crowd and SpongeBob and everybody reacting to these very unusual looking fish that, oh, they must be near a toxic waste dump. You know, that's really cool. SpongeBob uses live action relatively often, but it's not very often that, like, SpongeBob and crew gets to react to humans. I mean, this happened long before the second SpongeBob movie and, well, a little bit before the first SpongeBob movie, so it was just kind of interesting. And I mean, just visually effects speaking, when SpongeBob and everyone is singing, just having them all in the background cheering, it looks pretty good. Like, the effect could have looked, like, weird and cheesy, but honestly, it looks pretty cool because of how small they made the people. And then when they're all taking out their lights, that looks really cool as well. And of course, that leads me into another memorable thing about the episode. That is the song. Of course, the song isn't actually sung by Tom Kenny or SpongeBob. Well, I mean, it's sung by SpongeBob, but it's not SpongeBob's voice. But even still, it's just a very cool song and a very epic ending to it all, with SpongeBob singing his heart out and Squidward doing his little poses and gloating in Squilliam's face and Patrick on the drums. Like, it just, it all comes together and creates a very, very memorable scene in SpongeBob history. So yeah, that's kind of my theory of why a lot of people really love this episode. I mean, these are the things that this episode does that are not necessarily unique to it, but that are unique to this and a lot of other really good episodes in the original run of the show. If you think Band Geeks is your favorite episode, please let me know down in the comments why you think this. I'm genuinely interested, and if you don't think it, then what is your favorite episode and why, and what do you think of Band Geeks? I'm excited to hear your responses. PIEGUYRULZ,